The rain cut into my skin like shards of glass, every drop a cruel reminder of how completely I'd been cast out. My torn coat, once a mark of belonging to the Silvertree pack, hung from my trembling shoulders like a surrender flag, limp and useless. The forest moaned around me, branches twisting under the weight of the oncoming storm, as if even the trees wanted to pull away from me. Rejected. The word burned on my tongue, bitterer than hunger itself. For 3 endless days, the rain had been my only companion. You are no longer welcome among us. Varric's voice had thundered through the clearing that day, every eye fixed on me as he declared my shame. Your bloodline is weak. You bring no strength to our pack. You are, defective. In a world ruled by hierarchy, I was nothing. An omega without power, without a gift, without worth. My pale blonde hair, so unlike the dark tones of the others, only branded me further as the outsider. I had spent years learning to live with their stares that slid through me as if I were a ghost. Now I stumbled through mud and roots, led only by the faint smell of water. My grandmother Tala had taught me long ago how to find shelter during a storm. Follow the water downhill, the tallest trees draw the lightning. I could still hear her soft voice, feel the cool press of the silver pendant she'd placed in my palm. The same pendant now resting against my throat, my last tie to love, to family. Trust your instincts, she'd whispered before she died. They're stronger than you know. But what instincts had led me here? To this ravine heavy with the scent of wolves. Wolves that were not mine. Something in the air pulsed wild and dangerous. My heart pounded when I caught the low growl. It came from a shadow, a narrow cave mouth, hidden beneath fallen logs and thick vines. Fear clawed at my throat, but curiosity pushed me forward. Maybe it was madness, or maybe it was the thought that being torn apart by wolves would be quicker than starving alone. Or maybe it was the soft, hollow whimper that followed the growl, a sound I knew too well. Hunger, pain, desperation. I crept closer, body tense, rain dripping from my hair into my eyes. The entrance was tight, but I was small, another flaw my pack had despised. I slipped through and blinked into the dimness. My breath hitched. 3 wolves lay huddled together, ribs jutting out beneath tangled fur. One larger gray scar down his muzzle lifted his head weakly. His amber eyes locked onto mine with a warning and a plea. They weren't pack wolves, too thin, too wild. Rogues, maybe. Exiles. Cast out like me. I have nothing. I whispered, voice shaking as I unshouldered my small pack. But I can share what little there is. The pack had let me keep my foraging tools, a mercy born of indifference. I emptied my bag, a few roots, some berries. Hardly enough for myself. But I laid them on the cold ground before the wolves. The gray male growled low but didn't move. The smallest, a tawny female, whimpered and inched forward, her hunger winning over fear. It's okay, I murmured softly, stepping back to give her space. I know what it's like when no one wants you. Thunder split the sky outside, a whip crack from the heavens. The storm was in full fury now, trapping us all inside this fragile moment. I sank against the stone wall, watching as they devoured my offering in cautious silence. The gray wolf's eyes never left me, not even when he finally gave in to his hunger. There was something behind that stare, something almost human, a recognition I couldn't explain. There was something unsettling in that stare, an intelligence that seemed to slice straight through my walls, reaching into the parts of me I'd buried from everyone, even myself. When they were done eating, I expected the inevitable, the moment they turned on me, teeth and hunger replacing gratitude. But instead the tawny female crept closer, hesitant at first, then sank beside me with a weary sigh. Her warmth pressed against my frozen limbs, and I whispered softly, "You're welcome," barely daring to move as I slid my shaking hand over her coarse fur. The gray wolf never stopped watching, those piercing amber eyes locked on me. For a heartbeat, something flickered behind that stare, recognition, calculation, almost human awareness. The third wolf, a younger male with a dark patch over one eye, had already curled up in sleep, certain I posed no threat. Outside, the storm raged harder, the wind wailing through the trees like a grieving spirit. Yet in that narrow cave, surrounded by creatures who took what little I offered without judgment, I felt something I hadn't known since my exile peace. Exhaustion dragged me under. I slept surrounded by the soft breathing of wolves, dreaming of running through endless forest shadows with glowing eyes, racing beside me and always a presence just behind me, strong, watching, claiming. I woke to silence. The storm had passed, leaving pale light filtering through the cave mouth. The wolves were gone. Only paw prints remained in the damp earth, along with the wild, lingering scent of fur and rain. For a moment, loss clawed at my chest, but survival pushed through the ache. I gathered my few belongings and stepped outside. The forest had changed, broken branches littered the ground and small streams cut through new paths. The air was crisp, washed clean. That's when I saw them. Tracks massive, deeper than any I'd ever seen, circling the cave. Not the ones from last night. Something far larger. A chill ran through me. There was only one wolf in the northern wilds who left marks like that. The Alpha King of the Northern Territories. Darius. A name whispered in fear. His cruelty was legend. His reach unmatched. What was he doing this far from his domain? I stepped back, every instinct screaming at me to run. But before I could take more than a few steps, the forest went dead silent. No wind, no birds, just the sound of my pulse hammering in my ears. Then movement. Between two ancient oaks, a figure stepped out of the mist, and the world itself seemed to pause. The stories hadn't lied, but they hadn't come close to the truth. In human form, Darius towered over me, nearly 7 feet of raw power and command. Midnight black hair spilled over his shoulders, and his body was carved muscle and dominance. His face looked chiseled from stone, harsh and unforgiving. But it was his eyes that froze me, gold like a harvest moon, bright and merciless. He wore only leather pants and an open vest, revealing the dark ink of intricate tattoos that wound across his chest and arms, marks of conquest, of power, of blood spilled. "Little Omega," he said, his voice rolling like distant thunder. "Do you know what you did last night? I couldn't move, couldn't breathe." The silver pendant at my throat burned hot against my skin, as if Tala herself were warning me to be brave. "No," I whispered, my voice barely more than air. His lips curved, not quite a smile, something sharper, hungrier, predatory. "You fed my scouts," Darius said, his tone smooth, but edged like a blade. "The ones I sent to test the loyalty of every pack across these lands." He stepped closer, and I had to summon every ounce of will not to back away. They were under strict orders. He continued to take no help from anyone, to report whoever tried. Cold rushed through my veins. Gods, what had I done? I'd walked straight into the crossfire of pack politics without even knowing it. My voice trembled when I whispered I didn't know, clearly. His boots crunched over the wet earth as he took another deliberate step toward me. "What is your name, little one, Lyra?" The truth slipped out before I could stop it, when a lie would have been safer. "Lyra," he repeated, letting the sound linger on his tongue. The way he said it, slow, claiming, made my heart stutter painfully. Tell me, why would an Omega with no pack and no protection risk her life feeding 3 dangerous rogues during a storm? How did he know I had no pack? Had he been watching me? "They were starving," I said quietly. "I know what that feels like." Something flickered in those golden eyes, surprise maybe, or disbelief. He began to circle me like a predator, measuring the worth of its prey. Every instinct screamed at me not to move, not to show fear. "The Silver Tree Pack cast you out," he said flatly, not asking but stating, "for weakness." I flinched, my throat tight. "Yes." He stopped in front of me again. Up close, I could see the faint scars across his cheekbones. old battle marks that told their own stories. There was no kindness in him, no mercy written into that face. Weakness, he echoed, reaching out with one powerful hand to tilt my chin upward until I met his eyes. Yet you walked into a den of starving wolves and gave them what little you had. His thumb brushed my lower lip, light as breath. That's an interesting kind of weakness. My pulse thundered so loud it drowned the wind. No one had ever touched me like that, like I was something he already owned. In my old pack, I'd been invisible, unworthy of a glance, let alone a touch. What happens now? I whispered, my voice breaking. His gaze dipped to the pendant at my throat, the one Tala had given me, then returned to my face. Something shifted in his expression, a decision solidifying. Now, little Lyra, he said, his voice dropping to a low rumble that vibrated through my bones. You come with me. It wasn't a request. It wasn't even a command. It was a fact, a law written in his tone. The morning light caught in his black hair, gilding the edges with gold, and in that moment I knew with a bone-deep certainty that my life had just changed forever. I can't go with you, I blurted, panic clawing up my chest before I could think. One dark brow lifted, barely perceptible. The Alpha King didn't take defiance well, everyone knew that. Those who refused him didn't live long enough to regret it. Can't, he repeated softly, dangerously, or won't both? I managed to say, though my voice shook. I'm not pack material. That's already been made clear. My fingers brushed the torn spot on my coat where my insignia used to be. And your lands are days away from here. You think I travel alone? His mouth curved, not quite a smile, more like the promise of one. As if summoned, movement rippled through the trees. Shapes emerged, 6 figures tall, silent, all wearing the gleaming silver armbands of the Northern Elite Guard. They formed a loose circle around us, their faces expressionless. My heart sank. There was no escape. Please, I whispered, hating how small my voice sounded. I've done nothing wrong. No, Darius said, his tone softening just a fraction. That's exactly why you're coming with me. Before I could protest, he turned to his guards. Prepare to move out. The little Omega rides with me. Ride, I started, but the word barely left my lips before he scooped me up, effortlessly, cradling me against his chest as if I weighed nothing. He carried me through the trees to where a line of horses waited, their breath steaming in the cool morning air. I'd never ridden before. Omegas in my old pack walked while the Alphas rode, but Darius lifted me onto a massive black stallion and swung up behind me. His chest pressed against my back, solid and impossibly warm. His voice brushed my ear like smoke. Hold on, little Lyra. Darius's arms came around me as he took the reins, his body closing in until there was no space left between us. I was trapped in a cage of muscle and heat. Hold tight, he murmured, his breath brushing my ear low, commanding far too close. It's a long ride. The world became a blur of motion and wind. Trees streaked past, hooves pounded the soaked earth, and my pulse thudded in my throat. His pace was relentless, wild, untamed, and every jolt had my hands gripping the saddle's pommel until my knuckles burned. I wanted to ask why me, why the Alpha King himself would bother with an abandoned Omega, but fear sealed my lips. By midday, we reached a clearing by a rushing stream. His guards dismounted with practiced precision, one tending the horses, another lighting a fire. I stood awkwardly, to the side, feeling small and painfully out of place among wolves born to power. Darius approached, his shadow long in the sunlight, and held out a water skin. Drink, he said. You're pale. My hands shook as I took it. The water was cold, clean, a relief against my dry throat. Thank you, I managed. The words felt foreign. In my old life, Alphas didn't need gratitude. They demanded it. He watched me with that unreadable expression. You're afraid of me. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Everyone is. Not everyone fed my wolves during a storm. He took the water skin back, his fingers brushing mine, a fleeting spark that sent my heart into chaos. "Tell me about the Silver Tree Pack," he said. I froze. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Start with why they cast you out." My gaze dropped to my boots. Shame pressed heavy in my chest. "I told you," I said quietly. "I'm defective." "How?" His tone was even, but there was steel under it. "I can't shift properly." The confession cut like glass. Only halfway. "I can't hold the wolf form. It's shameful. They said it showed weak blood." I forced myself to meet his eyes, expecting scorn. Instead, he just studied me, silent, steady. "And that was enough to exile you?" he asked. "It was everything." My voice cracked. "An Omega who can't shift, can't hunt, can't defend, can't serve the pack." I was a burden during a hard winter. There were fights with neighboring packs. They needed the strong, so they sent me away. His jaw tightened. "They left you to die. They gave me 3 days head start," I said bitterly. "That's mercy to them." His expression darkened, something sharp flickering in those gold eyes. "Mercy," he repeated the word, sounding like a threat. Then he turned sharply toward his men. "Mount up. We ride." There was no explanation, no warning, just movement. The tension in him had shifted. It hummed through the air like an approaching storm. Even his guards noticed it. They exchanged quick, wary glances as we rode harder, faster. Hours bled into dusk. The forests grew denser, colder. The air turned crisp and thin as the land began to rise beneath us, mountain country, the boundary of his domain. My body screamed in protest with every jolt of the saddle. When we finally stopped, I could barely stand. My legs trembled as I slid from the horse and would have collapsed if Darius hadn't caught me. His hands closed around my shoulders, steady and unyielding. First time on a horse, he asked, his tone somewhere between curiosity and amusement. I nodded, too drained to answer. "Set up camp," he ordered his guards. "Double the watch. We're still in contested lands." One of the guards, a tall, lean woman, with sharp eyes and a scar slicing through her brow, stepped forward. "Sire," she said, "storm moving in from the north. Should we find cover?" Darius tilted his head back, gaze lifting to the darkening sky. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and for the briefest moment, lightning caught in his golden eyes. "Let it come," he said quietly. "We ride through worse than storms. No, we move at first light." Darius set his hand still heavy on my shoulder, a weight that felt both protective and dangerous at once. "See to it that Lyra has something warm for the mountain pass." The female guard's eyes flicked up in surprise at hearing my name on his lips, but she nodded quickly and left. "Come," he said, steering me toward the camp where his men worked with sharp, practiced efficiency. "You need food." A fire already crackled at the center of the clearing, its glow cutting through the growing chill. I sank to the ground, stretching my numb fingers toward the heat. Darius sat beside me, his broad frame casting a shadow over mine. "You know my name," I said softly, eyes on the flames. "But I don't know yours." "Everyone just calls you the Alpha King." A flicker of something amusement maybe touched his otherwise hard features. "The stories say I bathe in my enemy's blood and devour the hearts of those who cross me." My throat tightened. "Don't you—" A deep laugh rolled out of him, low, rough, unexpected. Even his guards paused for a moment, glancing over with something like disbelief, before returning to their duties. "Only on holidays," he said dryly. It took me a moment to realize he was joking. "Darius," he added finally. "My name is Darius. Fitting, isn't it? A name for the monster they whisper about." Darius. It suited him. Dark, commanding, carrying weight like a warning. "Why are you doing this?" The question spilled out before I could stop it. "Why take me?" For a long while he said nothing. Only watched the flames twist between us. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and rough, meant only for me. Because you showed mercy when no one showed it to you. Because you gave what you didn't have. That kind of heart. His eyes caught the firelight, glowing molten gold. It's almost extinct in our world, little Omega. A soldier approached with bowls of steaming stew. The smell hit me hard, meat spice warmth. My stomach growled loud enough to make Darius smirk. "Eat," he said, taking his own bowl with a nod to the guard. I obeyed, tasting each bite slowly, trying not to appear desperate, but every mouthful burned down like life itself. He watched me the whole time, silent, assessing unreadable. The others kept their distance, pretending not to notice how close their king sat to me. When I finished, he set his bowl aside. "Tomorrow we cross into my lands. You should understand what that means." "What does it mean?" I asked quietly. "It means you'll be under my protection," he said, voice even, but edged with something deeper. "No one touches you, no one calls you defective again, but they will watch you, an Omega who somehow caught their king's attention." My heart stuttered. "I don't understand what you want from me." "Neither do I," he admitted, and the honesty in his tone startled me more than any threat could. "But I know what I saw last night, an outcast starving, still giving her last scraps to strangers." He leaned in close enough that his scent pine smoke and something wild wrapped around me like heat. "Do you have any idea how rare that is? Lyra kindness with no strings attached." Before I could answer, he stood in one smooth motion, all command once again. "Rest. Dawn comes fast, and the mountain won't show mercy." A female guard appeared, then gesturing for me to follow her to a small tent at the edge of camp. Inside waited a bedroll, thick with furs and a neatly folded change of clothes. "The king said you'd need these," she said, pointing to a pair of new leather boots. "Your old ones won't last in the mountains." I stared, overwhelmed. "Thank you, Vera," she replied, her expression softening a little. "Captain of the King's Guard, why is he doing this?" I asked, unable to stop myself. Surely he has more important things to worry about than one stray Omega. Vera studied me quietly for a moment, then said, "The king never acts without reason, but—" Her gaze drifted toward the firelight, where Darius stood framed by the glow like a shadow carved from flame. "I haven't seen him like this in a very long time." Vera hesitated in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "Rest well, Lyra. Tomorrow will test every one of us." Then she was gone, leaving only the sound of wind against the canvas walls. I changed into the clothes she'd given me, simple, warm, and far finer than anything I'd ever owned. The fabric was clean, soft against my skin, a luxury I'd long forgotten. Curling up on the bedroll, I pulled the furs around me, listening to the low murmur of voices outside, the laughter, the rhythm of shared familiarity. The sound of a real pack. It hollowed me out with a kind of ache I didn't have a name for. Sleep refused to come. My thoughts circled the same questions until they tangled together. Why me? Why would Darius, the Alpha King, whose name was spoken in fear, take interest in someone like me? What would happen when he realized how broken I truly was? I reached for Tala's pendant, feeling its cool weight in my palm. Her voice whispered in memory, "Trust your instincts. They're stronger than you know." Those instincts had led me into that cave during the storm, had driven me to share food with starving wolves who could have torn me apart. And now, those same instincts whispered that I was heading towards something that mattered, something that would change everything. Outside, the wind rose, carrying with it a distant chorus of howls, wild wolves, calling to the full moon above the treetops. For a moment, I could almost feel Darius listening too, somewhere nearby, caught in the same pull of that primal song. For the first time since exile, I let myself hope, not for belonging, not for forgiveness, just for strength, for the courage to survive and to be seen without shame. Wrapped in that fragile hope, I finally drifted into sleep. Dawn came sharp and cold. The camp was already stirring when I stepped outside. Guards packed up shelters with efficient speed horses were being saddled, and smoke from the dying fire curled into the pale morning sky. Darius stood at the clearing's edge, speaking with Lyra. The light caught in his dark hair, revealing faint streaks of silver I hadn't noticed before. When he turned, his golden eyes found mine instantly, as if he'd sensed me before seeing me. "Lyra," he called, motioning me over. "Eat quickly. We need to reach the pass before the weather turns." A guard handed me dried meat and coarse bread. I accepted with quiet gratitude. "Thank you. Did you sleep well?" Darius asked, his tone almost casual, but his eyes studied me too closely. "Yes," I lied smoothly. No need to tell him how thoughts of him had chased away rest. He nodded. "The mountain pass is treacherous this time of year. Stay close to me." Within minutes we were mounted again. I sat before him on his stallion, his arm resting across my waist as he guided the reins. The climb was steep, the air sharp and thin. The forest fell away behind us, replaced by raw stone cliffs and snow-dusted pines. "There," he said near my ear, pointing toward a jagged gap between two peaks. "The gateway to the north. My lands begin there." Clouds swirled low over the pass, ghost-like and restless. A shiver rippled through me, half from cold, half from unease. "Once we cross, travel will be faster," he continued. "My patrols keep the roads clear." "How large are your territories?" I asked, eager to think of anything but the heat of him against my back. 3 days' ride to the Winter Palace," he said. "Another 2 to the summer hunting grounds. The north holds 5 mountain ranges, and every valley between them answers to me." His words sank in. The Silvertree Pack's land could be crossed in less than a day. His power dwarfed anything I'd ever known. The wind picked up as we neared the pass. Snowflakes began to fall, soft at first, then heavy and biting. The guards closed formation around us, faces grim. "The trail narrows ahead," Darius warned. "Hold tight." I gripped the saddle's pommel as the stallion carefully picked its way along the slick rock path. The air thinned and the ledge narrowed until our boots nearly scraped the cliffside. Below us, a white abyss yawned open, swirling mist, hiding how far the drop went. Snow lashed at my face, clinging to my lashes until the world blurred white. Darius's arm tightened around my waist, anchoring me. "Not much farther," he murmured, voice rough against my ear. Whether he was reassuring me or himself, I couldn't tell. Then the mountain roared. A sharp crack split the air, echoing off the stone walls like thunder, followed by the grinding sound of something massive giving way above us. The sound was like the earth itself, cracking open, loud, violent, and final. The guards shouted in unison, their voices slicing through the storm. Avalanche Vera's command tore through the wind. Go Darius didn't hesitate. He kicked the stallion hard, driving us forward, just as the mountain above us exploded. The horse lunged into motion, hooves scraping for traction on the narrow path. Behind us came the thunder, snow, and rock, collapsing, roaring like a beast unleashed. We barely cleared the bottleneck before the avalanche struck the world, shaking beneath us. For a heartbeat, I thought the mountain would swallow us whole, then silence. When the snow finally settled, the path behind was gone, buried under tons of white death. Darius pulled the stallion to a halt, scanning the devastation. "Report," he barked. Lyra emerged from the haze, 4 guards close behind. Their faces were pale with cold and fear. 2 missing, she said tightly. Riven and Brax. They were at the rear. Darius's jaw flexed, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "Search for survivors." He swung off the stallion, lifting me down before I could protest. "Stay here." The command left no room for argument. I watched him stride into the storm with his pack calling names into the wind. Snow whipped around them in blinding sheets, but they moved as one, fast, sure, a true pack, bound by instinct. The ache in my chest was sudden and sharp. My old pack would have left me buried without a second glance. A shout broke through the chaos. Here I found him. Riven, I didn't think. I just moved. By the time I reached them, They'd already started digging, clawing at the snow with frantic hands. They unearthed a young guard, his face bloodied, his leg twisted grotesquely. His breathing was ragged, his eyes glassy with pain. "Soren," he croaked, teeth gritted against the cold. Vera shook her head, still searching. I knelt beside him, instincts taking over. "May I help?" I asked Vera quietly. She glanced toward Darius, who gave a single curt nod. "Do what you can." I placed my hands on Riven's leg, feeling the break beneath the skin. "It's a clean fracture," I said, quickly. "But there could be internal damage. He won't make it far without stabilizing it." "The nearest outpost is half a day's ride," Vera said grimly. "Then we stabilize it here," I said, surprising even myself with the certainty in my voice. "I'll need 2 straight branches for splints and something to bind them." Darius gestured sharply, and 2 guards moved instantly to obey. To Vera, he said, "Keep searching for Brax." While they worked, I spoke softly to Riven, keeping him awake. "This will hurt," I warned him as I positioned my hands. "But you're strong. You'll heal." His eyes flickered. "You're the Omega from the south." "Yes." I met his gaze. "Now hold still." With one swift, sure motion, I reset the bone. His roar echoed across the cliffs, raw and primal, but he didn't fight me. I worked quickly, binding the splints with strips of cloth torn from a spare shirt. When I was done, I sat back, breath visible in the frozen air. "That'll hold until we reach the outpost." Darius crouched beside me, silent. His eyes burned like molten gold against the snow. "Where did you learn that, my grandmother Tala?" I said, still checking Riven's pulse. "She was a healer. She taught me before she passed." Something shifted in his gaze. Anger. Sorrow, maybe. Both, but not at me. Before he could speak, Vera returned her face ashen. "No sign of Brax," she said. "And the snow's getting worse. If we stay, we'll be buried next." Darius stood, his decision immediate. We moved to the outpost. "Riven rides with Kian. Vera, you and Mira take point." He turned to me, his tone softening just slightly, as his gaze met mine through the falling snow. "You did well, Lyra. You did well, little Omega." The words hit deeper than I expected. Warmth bloomed in my chest, foreign, fragile, something dangerously close to pride. We set out again, slower this time, to spare Riven's injuries. The world beyond the northern gateway unfolded in cold splendor, jagged ridges, softened by snow forests of pine and spruce, stretching endlessly under a gray sky. The air carried the sharp scent of frost and bark. As we descended into a vast valley, signs of civilization began to appear: cleared roads, smoke curling in the distance, faint sounds of hammers striking iron. Then I saw it, a sprawling compound of stone and timber, walled and guarded. "The northern outpost," Darius said beside me. "First line of defense in my lands." It wasn't what I'd imagined. It was larger, alive. Watchtowers ringed the walls, and soldiers wearing silver insignias like his stood at attention as we approached. Wolves, some in human form and others half-shifted, stopped mid-task to bow their heads. Whispers followed us, carried on the wind. The Alpha King had returned. We rode straight to the infirmary. Riven was lifted carefully from his horse and rushed inside to the healers waiting within. Only then did Darius exhale, tension easing from his shoulders. "We'll stay here tonight," he said. "The storm will break by morning." A tall woman approached her, bearing sharp and disciplined. She bowed deeply. "My king, we weren't expecting your arrival. Quarters are being arranged immediately." "Thank you, Commander Mira," Darius replied. "This is Lyra. She'll stay in my quarters." My head snapped up. His quarters. Mira's brow arched, but she bowed again smoothly. "Understood, my king. I'll see to it myself." As soon as she turned away, I hissed under my breath, "Your quarters." A ghost of a smile curved his lips. "Don't worry, little Omega. My intentions are respectable, but word will spread about you before nightfall, and there are those who would test what belongs under my protection." You'll be safest with me." Before I could argue, I was already being led inside. The main hall stunned me, warm light spilling from sconces rugs, thick enough to swallow my boots' walls, draped with tapestries of hunts, battles, and moonlit wolves. A massive hearth roared at the center heat, wrapping around me like a physical touch. "Rest," Darius said, nodding toward a side door. "That room is yours for now. Food will be sent. I have matters to attend." When he left, silence filled the space like an exhale. I wandered cautiously through his quarters. The bedroom was large, dominated by a bed layered in furs. But it was the adjoining bath chamber that made me stop. Steam rose from a stone tub filled with clear, hot water. Beside it sat neatly arranged oils and folded towels. I didn't think twice. Shedding my filthy travel clothes, I slipped into the water. A low sound of relief escaped me as heat seeped into my sore limbs. I scrubbed until the grime of the road disappeared, watching the water swirl dark before turning clear again. When I stepped out wrapping myself in a linen towel, I found new clothes waiting on the bed. A soft blue tunic and leggings, simple but finely made. They fit perfectly. For the first time in years, I looked like someone worth seeing. I sat by the fire, brushing my damp hair through my fingers. My mind drifted to the mountain pass to Riven's, pained to the way Darius had watched me work. That flicker in his eyes when he'd said, "You did well." It stirred something I'd buried long ago, a need for approval. Dangerous, foolish, and warm all at once. I reminded myself it wouldn't last. I was here because of his curiosity, and curiosity always fades. A knock pulled me from my thoughts. A young woman entered, balancing a tray heavy with food, roasted meat, bread, fruit, and steaming broth. "The king asked that you eat, my lady," she said, setting it down on a small table. "He'll join you shortly." "My lady?" I blinked, startled. "I'm no lady. I'm just an Omega." The girl frowned slightly, unsure how to respond. "He said to treat you as one," she murmured, before bowing out, leaving me alone with the firelight and the impossible thought that perhaps for one night I wasn't just an outcast anymore. "But the king himself brought you here," the girl said, her eyes wide with awe. "You wear his colors." She gestured at the deep blue tunic I wore. "You must be someone special." Before I could find words, she bowed quickly and slipped out, leaving me staring after her in disbelief. Special. The idea was laughable. Yet Darius had brought me here himself, had spoken to me, kindly, had trusted me enough to help Riven. None of it made sense. I picked at the food appetite fading beneath the churn of questions and unease. What would happen once we reached the Winter Palace? What could a broken Omega possibly be to a king like him? Outside, the wind screamed through the valley snow, lashing against the walls. I curled my fingers around my grandmother's pendant and whispered the same words she'd always told me. "Trust your instincts. They're stronger than you know." The door opened softly. Darius stepped inside, snowflakes clinging to his dark hair, his shoulders dusted white. He removed his cloak, hung it by the fire, and crossed the room with that effortless confidence that made everyone else seem smaller. "The storm's worsening," he said, helping himself to the food on my tray. "We'll stay one more night." I nodded, unable to decide if that thought thrilled me or terrified me. "Riven will recover," he continued, glancing up. "The healer said your quick action saved his leg. He wants to thank you himself tomorrow." "I only did what anyone would have," I murmured. He let out a low laugh, dry without amusement. "No, Lyra. What you did is exactly what most wouldn't have done." His golden eyes caught mine, pinning me in place. "Most wolves would have left him for the healers and walked away. You acted with skill and compassion." I dropped my gaze, heat creeping up my neck. "Omegas in my old pack were trained to assist healers," I said quietly. "It was one of the few things they trusted us to do. Your grandmother taught you more than that," Darius said, leaning back in his chair, the firelight turning his eyes molten. The mention of Tala made my throat tighten. She believed everyone had value, I whispered. Even broken things. Silence stretched between us softer now, but weighted with something I couldn't name. Finally, his voice came low, careful. Tell me about this defect that made the Silvertree Pack cast you out. I tensed. I told you. I can't shift properly. Show me, he said. The words struck like a blade. No, I breathed, heart hammering. You can, he replied, his tone still calm, steady as stone. I've seen every kind of shift. Nothing you show me will disgust me. I shook my head. Please, don't ask me to. He moved closer, lowering himself until he was kneeling in front of me, the Alpha King on his knees. Lyra, he said softly, whatever you show me changes nothing about your place here, but I need to see my place. The phrase caught somewhere between comfort and fear. I didn't understand what he meant, only that disobeying wasn't an option. With shaking hands, I stepped back from the chair, giving myself room. It's not pleasant, I warned. Few shifts are, he said simply. I closed my eyes and reached for the part of myself I'd spent years trying to silence. The wolf beneath my skin stirred weakly, the transformation clawing its way through bone and sinew. Pain flared sharp and familiar. My face stretched partially, teeth lengthening. Patches of pale golden fur rippled across my shoulders and arms, but the rest of my body remained stubbornly human. My hands twisted, half claw, half skin, trapped between two worlds. It always stopped there, frozen. I stood trembling before him, half formed, half failed. Shame burned through me, and I kept my eyes shut, unwilling to see the revulsion on his face. The silence dragged on. Only the fire crackled and the storm moaned outside. Then warmth. A hand rough and steady brushed my cheek. His fingers traced the edge where skin met fur. Open your eyes, Lyra Darius murmured. I did. And what I saw wasn't disgust. It was wonder. Extraordinary, he whispered. Darius's touch lingered as his eyes studied every imperfect line of my half-shifted form. You're caught between forms, he said quietly, almost to himself. Defective, I corrected bitterly. That's the word they used. His gaze flicked up to mine sharp. No, this isn't a defect. It's something different. His fingers brushed lightly against my partially formed ear, warm against the fur and skin. Does it hurt? Staying like this? Yes, I whispered. If I hold it too long, then stop. His tone softened. He stepped back, giving me room. The change back was always easier. My body seemed relieved to return to human, though every muscle trembled with exhaustion. I hugged myself, shivering despite the fire's glow. Darius watched me with that same unreadable expression, part curiosity, part calculation. How long have you shifted like this, he asked. Since I was 13, I said. When others found their wolves, mine never fully came. He turned away, pacing the room in slow, measured strides. His jaw flexed, thoughts clearly racing behind those golden eyes. What, I asked, heart pounding. What are you thinking? He stopped, facing me fully. I'm thinking the Silvertree Pack were fools, he said bluntly. And their loss might just be my greatest gain. I stared at him, startled. But before I could demand an explanation, he cut the moment short. You should rest, he said, voice steady again. Tomorrow will bring new challenges. Dismissed, but still burning with questions, I retreated to the bedroom. His words echoed in my mind long after the fire dimmed. Their loss, my gain. What did he see in me that others hadn't? Why did my broken shift not repulse him, but intrigue him instead? Sleep eventually claimed me, heavy and dreamless. When I woke, sunlight streamed through tall windows I hadn't noticed before. The storm had passed, leaving the world blanketed in a flawless sheet of snow, glittering like crushed glass. A soft knock sounded. The young woman from last night, Nomi, entered with a tray and a folded bundle. Good morning, my lady, she said brightly. setting down the food. "The king requests you join him for training once you've eaten. These are for you." She laid out a set of dark riding breeches, a fitted tunic, and a cloak lined with silver-tipped fur. "Training," I repeated, startled. "Combat training," she clarified, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Everyone in the king's inner circle trains each morning. Inner circle." The phrase hit me like a shock. Surely she was mistaken. I was no warrior and no advisor, just a curiosity he'd chosen to keep alive. When she left, I dressed quickly, curiosity outweighing fear. The clothes fit perfectly warm and elegant. The cloak, deep blue, trimmed in silver, gleamed softly in the morning light, matching the pendant around my neck. Outside, I found Darius in a snow-dusted courtyard surrounded by wolves locked in combat drills. Blades clashed. Bodies moved with brutal grace. I recognized Kael among them, her strikes precise and fluid, as she sparred against a male twice her size. Darius spotted me immediately. He broke off his conversation and strode toward me, his presence commanding even here among warriors. "You slept well?" he asked, his gaze sweeping over me, lingering a moment too long. "Yes," I said quietly. My eyes darted to the fighting wolves. "I was told you wanted me to train, but I'm not a fighter." A faint smile curved his mouth. "That remains to be seen." He guided me to a quieter corner of the yard, snow crunching beneath our boots. "Show me how you defend yourself." "I don't," I admitted. "I run. And if you can't run, then I hide." My voice dropped. "Or I'm caught." Something dark flickered in his eyes. "That ends today." He stepped back, lowering into a fighting stance. "Try to strike me." I blinked at him. "I what?" "No." "You can," he said firmly. "And you will. Consider it payment for my hospitality." Reluctantly, I raised my hands, clumsy in imitation of his posture. He watched me for a moment, unimpressed. When I hesitated too long, he exhaled the sound, almost amused. "Perhaps you need a reason." His voice lowered to a challenge. "If you land even one blow," he said, his smile slow and dangerous, "I'll answer any question you want." The challenge in his voice was deliberate, almost teasing, and I hated that it worked. There were 1,000 questions clawing at my thoughts. Why me? Why bring me here? What did he see when he looked at me? If landing a single blow could earn me one honest answer, then I'd damn well try. I lunged forward, clumsy and unsure, aiming a swing at his chest. Darius moved like water smooth, effortless sidestepping and catching my wrist before spinning me so fast my back collided with his chest. His breath brushed my ear when he spoke. Again, he said, releasing me, "But this time use your anger. You've got plenty of it, buried under all that fear." His words hit deeper than I wanted to admit. I did have anger. At the pack that had cast me out. At the wolves who called me defective. At the world that decided I was less than. So when I moved again, I didn't think I let it out. My next strike came sharper, faster. He blocked it easily, but I caught the faint curve of approval at the corner of his mouth. "Better," he said. Again, we continued until my arms ached, and my breath came in ragged gasps. Snow kicked up around our boots as he corrected my stance. Guided my balance, taught me how to use speed instead of strength. He never once lost patience, even when I stumbled. By the time he finally called, "Enough," my muscles were trembling. I dropped onto a nearby bench, sweat cooling against my skin. "Did I earn my question?" I asked between breaths. He chuckled, a low, warm sound that made something twist inside me. "You didn't land a blow. You never said I had to succeed," I shot back. "You said I just had to try." For a heartbeat, surprise flickered across his features, then something like respect. "Clever," he admitted. "All right." "One question." I didn't hesitate. "Why did you bring me here?" The humor vanished from his eyes, replaced by something heavier, older. He sat beside me close enough that the heat of his body seeped through my cloak. "There's a prophecy," he said finally, voice low. "It's guided the rulers of the North for generations. It speaks of a time when the packs will turn on each other, when war and famine will tear through our kind, and a wolf who is not a wolf will rise to either unite or destroy us." My chest tightened. "A wolf who is not a wolf," he nodded. "When my scouts reported finding an outcast Omega who shared her last meal with strangers during a storm, I was intrigued. When they said you were different, that your scent carried both wolf and human notes, I came to see for myself." I stared at him. "You can't seriously think I'm part of some ancient prophecy. What I believe," he said carefully, "is that you are something rare. Your partial shift isn't a flaw, it's power. Once wolves like you existed. They were called halflings, bridges between the human and the beast. They were honored, not shunned. They could think clearly in either form, control instinct without losing themselves." I shook my head, unable to process it. If that's true, why would my pack cast me out? "Because they didn't know," he said simply. "Or they feared what they didn't understand." The knowledge of halflings vanished after the Great Division, but the royal archives still speak of them. I remembered the stories, the Great Division, the war that had nearly ended wolfkind. They were campfire legends, not history. "Even if you're right," I said quietly, "why does it matter to you?" Darius's gaze darkened. "Because the North stands on the edge of war, Lyra. The southern packs are restless. Old grudges are waking. If the prophecy is true and you are the one it speaks of." He let the rest hang in the cold air between us. I stared into the snow, heart hammering. Me, the castaway Omega, the key to peace or destruction. It was absurd, yet his conviction was absolute. "You believe I can stop a war," I whispered. He met my eyes, unwavering. "No," he said. "I believe you might be the only one who can." Darius's tone had turned steel cold. "That's why we train," he said. Just before Kale appeared, breath visible in the frozen air, her face drawn tight with urgency. "My king," she said, bowing quickly. "The scouts have returned from the southern border. The Silvertree Pack has crossed into disputed territory. They're searching for something. Or someone." Darius's expression darkened instantly. "They seek Lyra." The world seemed to tilt under me. "What? Why would they want me back? They banished me." "Perhaps they've suddenly remembered your worth," Darius said grimly, rising to his full height. "Or maybe they've heard whispers of my interest in you, and they want to know why." He turned to Kyle. "Prepare the convoy. We leave for the Winter Palace within the hour." As he strode off to issue commands, I stayed frozen on the bench, pulse hammering in my ears. My former pack, those who had cast me out into the snow, were now hunting for me. Why? What could they possibly want? We departed soon after this time with twice as many guards. The tension in Darius's shoulders was palpable as we rode through the drifts. He didn't speak for a long while, and when he finally did, his voice was quieter but no less sharp. "They won't find you," he said, as if sensing my fear. "But why now?" I asked softly. "They didn't care if I froze to death before. Why come after me?" His golden eyes flicked toward me. "You were never nothing, Lyra. They just lack the sight to recognize what you are." His hand brushed the edge of my cloak, adjusting it over my shoulders with surprising gentleness. "The question isn't why they want you back. It's why now, after condemning you to die in a storm." The bluntness made me flinch, but he was right. The Silvertree Pack had left me to perish. Whatever reason they had now, it couldn't be good. "And if they do find us," I asked quietly. His gaze hardened. "Then they'll remember why no one has ever conquered the North." We pressed harder through the snow, the landscape shifting into steep valleys and thick forests where frost coated every branch. By dusk, the air carried the faint scent of civilization. Smoke from hearth fires cleared roads, the watchful presence of patrols who saluted as we passed. We were deep inside Darius's domain now. When we finally stopped for the night, exhaustion hit me like a wave. My legs gave out as I dismounted, but his arms were already there, catching me before I could fall. "Not much farther," he murmured, steadying me. "We'll reach the Winter Palace tomorrow." Despite the ache in my body, sleep refused to come. I lay awake listening to the low murmur of guards outside the wind, whispering through pine branches and the storm of thoughts in my own head. Would I truly stand before his court as this supposed prophecy come to life? What if I failed him, failed them all? And somewhere far to the south, the Silver Tree wolves, my former pack, were on the move. The same wolves who had branded me worthless now suddenly wanted to reclaim me. Morning came too soon. The camp moved with sharp efficiency, but the tension in the air was unmistakable. The guards were watchful, their hands never far from their weapons. "Is something wrong?" I asked Kale as she helped me mount the black stallion. "Just precaution," she said, eyes scanning the horizon. "We're still in the borderlands." Before I could ask more, Darius swung into the saddle behind me. His voice cut through the crisp morning air. "Stay sharp. I want us at the palace before midday." The silence of the ride was heavy, stretched taut as a bowstring. I could feel Darius's restlessness in every movement, the way he leaned forward slightly as if trying to pull the entire world toward our destination. Then just before noon, the forest opened into a breathtaking valley. There, carved into the side of the mountains, rose a fortress of ice and stone, vast towers, silver banners rippling in the wind, and walls so high they caught the sun like glass. The Winter Palace. "It's magnificent," I breathed. Darius's hand rested lightly at my waist. "It's home," he said. His voice carried pride and something else, something raw. "And now, it will be yours too." A tremor ran through me that had nothing to do with the cold. Home. Could that word truly belong to me again? As we descended into the valley, movement on the road below caught Kale's attention. A group of riders, fast, purposeful, closing the distance. Darius tensed behind me. "Report," he barked. Coel rode ahead, met the oncoming patrol, then galloped back with her jaw set. "Silver Tree scouts, my king. They've crossed deeper into our borders. Our patrols have engaged them, but a few may have slipped through." The air went still. Darius's answer came in a voice that was low and lethal. "Then we end this before they ever reach her." Darius's arm tightened protectively around my waist. "How far?" he demanded, voice low and edged with steel. "Half a day's ride at most," Kael answered, her eyes flicking toward me before returning to the horizon. "They're moving with purpose, as if they already know exactly where to go." "They're tracking me," I murmured, dread curling through my gut. "Blood calls to blood," Darius said grimly. "If someone with your lineage rides among them, your scent would guide them anywhere." "I don't have family left," I protested. "My grandmother was the last." His tone sharpened. "Are you certain, Lyra? Think carefully. Any distant kin? Anyone who could share your bloodline?" I opened my mouth to deny it again, but a memory flickered to life. I was small, hidden, behind a half-closed door, hearing my grandmother argue with the Alpha. "Her father's blood runs strong in her," he had said. "You'll see it when she's grown." "My father," I whispered. "I never met him. He wasn't that from our pack. My mother met him while traveling. She died when I was born. Grandmother raised me." I twisted as much as the saddle allowed, meeting Darius's intense gaze. Could he still be alive? Could he be with the Silver Tree pack now? Darius's jaw clenched, golden eyes burning. "It would explain how they're tracking you so precisely." He snapped the reins. "We ride for the palace, no more stop." The stallion lunged forward and the escort surged with us. The valley blurred past in streaks of white and shadow as we raced toward the Winter Palace. The closer we came, the larger it loomed, walls of shimmering stone glowing faintly blue beneath the winter sun. Guards lined the battlements. The great iron gates yawned open as we thundered across the bridge spanning a ravine deep as a canyon. The hooves struck sparks from the stone. Only when the gates slammed shut behind us did Darius exhale. "Seal the gates," he ordered curtly. "Double the watch. No one enters without my word." Servants rushed forward to take the horses. From the courtyard's far side, a tall woman approached, her black hair streaked with silver, her movements elegant and sure. "My king," she greeted with a graceful bow. "Welcome home. All has been arranged as you instructed." "Thank you," Darius replied, then turned toward me and lifted me gently from the saddle. "This is Lyra. She is under my personal protection." Seren's sharp eyes studied me, her expression unreadable. "Of course. The East Wing chambers are prepared as you requested." Darius nodded. "Seren is my sentinel. She'll see to your needs." His hand brushed my cheek, brief, warm grounding. "Rest. I'll come for you tonight." Then he turned away, already surrounded by Kael and several guards, his voice low and commanding. Seren led me through endless marble halls that gleamed like ice. Vaulted ceilings soared above us. Tapestries of wolves and moonlit battles hung in deep blues and silvers. The air smelled faintly of pine and smoke. "The king has been preparing for your arrival for quite some time," Seren said as we ascended a sweeping staircase. "Though I admit, you're not what I expected." I frowned. "Preparing." "He only found me days ago." Seren gave a knowing half-smile. "The king has searched for you for nearly a year, ever since the ancient texts were fully translated. The prophecy was clear about certain traits. The wolf who is not a wolf. My partial shift. It hadn't been chance that Darius's scouts found me. They had been hunting for someone like me all along." "Here we are," Seren announced, stopping before an ornate door carved with silver vines. "Your chambers." She opened it and I froze on the threshold. Sunlight poured through high windows overlooking snow-capped peaks. A fireplace burned softly, throwing gold light over plush chairs and woven carpets. Through an archway, I saw a bedroom larger than the cottage I'd once shared with my grandmother. "This is for me," I breathed. "The king insisted you be comfortable," Seren said, her formality softening. "A bath awaits and garments suited to your station. His Majesty requests your presence at dinner in his private hall." Her words settled over me like a tremor. His private hall, whatever awaited there, would change everything. "I'll send someone to escort you when it's time," Darius had said before leaving. When the door closed, I found myself standing in the middle of my new chambers, still trying to believe any of this was real. The room looked like something torn from a dream, a massive four-poster bed, draped in dark blue velvet walls, lined with silver-threaded curtains that shimmered softly in the candlelight. Beyond an archway, a bathing chamber waited. Steam rose from a sunken tub already filled with perfumed water, and the air carried the faint scent of cedar and mountain rain. A third doorway opened into a dressing room, every surface gleaming with mirrors, fabrics, and gowns in shades of blue and silver. Each piece was my size. Every detail impossibly precise. Just days ago, I'd been half frozen, starving, left to die in the snow. Now I stood surrounded by luxury under the roof of the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories. All because of a prophecy. All because what my pack had called a defect might actually be something sacred. I slid into the hot water and exhaled as tension melted from my body. My thoughts didn't quiet, though; they only swirled faster. If Darius was right, if I really was this halfling mentioned in prophecy, what was expected of me? And what would happen when the Silver Tree pack finally reached the palace gates? When I finished bathing, I chose a gown deep blue trimmed with silver embroidery at the sleeves and hem. It fit perfectly, as though it had been sewn for me alone. The realization made my pulse quicken. How long has he been preparing for me? As twilight deepened, a soft knock sounded at the door. A young servant, Nomi, stood waiting. "The king requests your presence, my lady." She led me through candlelit corridors, past towering windows, glowing with reflected moonlight down a staircase guarded by Darius's elite soldiers. Their armor caught the firelight as one bowed and said, "The king awaits you." The doors opened to reveal an intimate dining chamber, a contrast to the palace's grand halls. The ceiling curved into a dark dome painted like a night sky, its stars glimmering with real crystal dust. A round table was set for two beside a roaring fire. Darius stood as I entered. His golden eyes widened slightly when they met mine. Gone was the leather and travel grit. He wore a black formal coat that traced the lines of his shoulders, the flicker of firelight catching on the silver clasp at his throat. "Lyra," he said my name, sounding almost reverent. "You look stunning." Heat crept up my neck. "Thank you. These rooms, the clothes, it's all too much." He pulled out my chair lips, curving faintly. "It's nothing you don't deserve. Wine." I nodded, still trying to reconcile the man before me, the fearsome alpha who had faced storms and blades, with this quiet, commanding king who poured wine with almost courtly grace. "Your palace is extraordinary," I said softly. "It's been my family's seat for 10 generations, he replied, taking his seat across from me, though lately it's felt empty. Empty." His gaze flicked toward the flames. "My parents were killed in a border conflict when I was 20. I've no siblings, no blood family. My guards and my pack, they're all I have left." I hadn't expected that. Somehow I'd imagined Darius surrounded by power and people untouchable. Instead, he spoke like someone who carried solitude as armor. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I know what it's like to lose everyone you love." His eyes met mine, warm and unguarded. "Yes," he murmured. "I believe you do." He set his goblet down, his expression turning serious again. "The Silvertree Pack crossed into our lands this afternoon. They'll reach the valley by tomorrow." My stomach tightened. "What will you do?" "Meet them," he said evenly. "Hear their excuses. Then remind them you're under my protection now. And if they demand to take me back..." The thought made my chest constrict. "They won't," he said, voice low, unyielding. "They cast you out, Lyra. They have no claim over you anymore." He reached across the table, his hand closing over mine, steady, warm, fierce. "I won't let them take you. Not unless it's truly what you want." My breath caught. Why, I whispered. "Because of the prophecy. The prophecy led me to you," he said quietly. "But it's not why I'm keeping you. But it's not why I want you to stay." My heart thudded hard enough to drown the crackle of the fire. Then why, I whispered. For a long moment Darius said nothing. His thumb traced slow, deliberate circles on the back of my hand, sending shivers through my skin. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, but carried the weight of truth. "Because in all my years as Alpha King, surrounded by those who fear me or crave my favor, I've never met someone who'd feed starving wolves in the middle of a blizzard, expecting nothing in return." He paused, his gaze locking with mine. "Because when you look at me, you don't see the title or the crown. You just see me. And because when you're here, this place doesn't feel hollow anymore." His words left me breathless. The warmth rising through me wasn't from the fire or the wine, it was from him. Before I could gather a reply, a sharp knock cut through the moment. Kyle stepped inside, her expression tense. "Forgive the interruption, my king, but our scouts have sighted Silvertree wolves moving north. They'll reach the palace by dawn." Darius's entire demeanor changed in an instant, the softness gone, replaced by the commanding power of the Alpha King. "How many? 20 at least," Kale replied. "Their Alpha rides with them, Draven, and several of his lieutenants." He stood, the firelight catching the edge of his jaw, as his voice turned to steel. "Prepare the great hall. We'll receive them formally." Then his golden eyes turned toward me, their fierceness tempered by concern. "You should rest, Lyra. Tomorrow will test us all." He left with Kyle at his side, their voices fading into the long corridors of stone and shadow. I stayed where I was, unable to move, the untouched food cooling before me. Tomorrow I would face the pack that had branded me worthless, the same wolves who had thrown me out to die. and now they were coming for me again. But this time, I wasn't the same helpless girl they'd abandoned. My fingers found the small pendant that had once belonged to my grandmother, its edges smooth from years of touch. I closed my eyes and breathed her words, the ones she'd always said when I doubted myself. Trust your instincts. They're stronger than you think. When I opened my eyes, the flames reflected in the wineglass looked like the glint of resolve. Whatever tomorrow brought, I knew one thing for certain. My place was no longer with the Silver Tree Pack. It was here, with Darius.